These are a couple still frames from a spec ad that I made for Kodak, and in this video I'm going to show you a bunch of behind the scenes clips and tell you the story of how I made this, and at the end present to you the final result. So this story begins just a couple weeks ago. The moment that kind of kicked off the project was when I was just going through my day as usual and was disrupted by an email, an unusual one. It was a message by feiyutech, a company I've known for a while for their gimbals. They were reaching out to ask whether I'd like to try out their new gimbal that is launching in December and possibly make something with it. At first I thought, I could make another short film now, but I'm not sure if I have regenerated my short film energy yet since the last one earlier this year, because you must know those projects really drain me. But then I did think of something. How about trying something new? Not a short film, but a commercial. And what if that commercial is for a brand that we all know and love some aspects of and hate some others? Kodak. And so I wrote back to feiyutech and told them, how about I make a commercial? Oh, that'd be brilliant. For Kodak. Wait, what? No? I mean, it will be made with a feiyutech gimbal, but it will be a commercial for Kodak. I will have to discuss this with the team. And so I waited, and waited, and waited. After this agonizingly long wait of about one day, I heard back from them and they said, go for it. Well, that meant I had to actually come up with an idea now. In all seriousness though, I spent about 1 or 2 days researching to come up with a rough concept at least, which I can then dive deeper into to make a shot list. First, I had to decide what kind of commercial I want to make and who it should target. Is this a commercial that should attract people who've never shot film to the analog medium? Or should it simply strengthen brand awareness? Or should it encourage film shooters like me to shoot even more? I watched a bunch of great ads compilations on YouTube to get a feel of what makes a good commercial. So yeah, I watched 2 ads to then watch a compilation of 10 ads. Lots of ads that week. I also researched past campaigns that simply consisted of good copywriting because maybe that could inspire me. And so with all these things swirling in my head, I eventually condensed my thoughts to 4 ideas. Let me break them down in a very quick and simple manner. Idea 1, don't just dream of magnificent colours, shoot them. Kodak. I was thinking of making a little story around this sentence. Idea 2, an elderly person regains their memories thanks to old photographs shot on Kodak. This was inspired by one of those more emotional ads. Idea 3, portrait is the best. No, gold is the best. Well, actually, it's aerochrome. I just wrote that down to remember this idea I had of, I guess, people fighting over which film stock is the best. Not sure about that one anymore. Idea 4. Going absolutely out of your way just to find some Kodak film instead of shooting the photo with your mobile phone. I was thinking of some story based on this premise. And so after some more time of thinking and asking Millie which she likes the most, I decided to go with idea 4 and make a story about someone going out of their way just to shoot Kodak film instead of using their mobile phone. By the way, before we continue with the idea, I just want to briefly clarify what a spec ad is in case you don't know. A spec ad is not a real commercial. I've not been in contact with Kodak to make this or anything. If I'm not mistaken, I believe spec ads are usually made as a sort of practice for cinematographers, directors, or other kind of filmmakers so that they have something cool to present in their portfolio. So if you're trying to get some commercial work but have nothing to show to potential clients to demonstrate what you're capable of, this is one way to simply make something for demonstration purposes. And so one might say, oh, let's imagine Kodak asked us to make a commercial, and then you make it. Anyway, I just wanted to make that clear. This video is sponsored by feiyutech, not Kodak. So back to my idea. I wrote a bunch of ideas down and imagined what the ad could look like in my head to come up with a more detailed idea. Something I realized pretty soon is that I would like to have some humor in the commercial, and I thought the way I could achieve this is by simply over-exaggerating the concept to the point that the protagonist is really going out of their way and basically leaving reality. You'll see what I mean. To be honest, I don't know if it'll work, but that's how filmmaking is. You never really know until you show the audience. So after watching the final result at the end, if you think that it didn't work out at all, please do let me know so that I can do better next time. Anyway, after some time, I had a detailed idea and a shortlist. All that was left was someone who'd like to be in front of the camera and be the protagonist of this little story. The story actually involves 2 people, but I thought to keep the shoot a bit easier, I'd just act that second role myself, as I've done in the past.
You do understand the brilliance of flaws, don't you?
For the protagonist, I found this guy.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. Back. Ohne Disk.
This is Denis, a friend of mine here in Innsbruck, who I had asked before for a shoot, which didn't work out. However, this time he was available, and so we made a plan. We messaged back and forth to find 2 days to schedule for our shoot, and then finally, on the last day before the shoot, I visited him so that I could explain to him what exactly we're actually doing, and also then plan outfits and stuff like that. Finally, one last task before the first day of shooting was to prepare my gear. My camera and lens setup was going to be the classic that I've been using for years, both for my YouTube videos and my short films, the Sony a7 III with the Tamron 28-75mm f2.8. Attached on top for some good audio was going to be my trusty Rode Video Micro. And lastly, to keep my camera stable during some action-packed scenes, feiyutech equipped me with their new gimbal, the feiyutech Scorp 2. This gimbal is seriously pretty cool. With a maximum load capacity of 2.5 kilograms, it is perfectly suited for my camera setup. The Scorp 2 is packed with features and modes and hence allows me to tune it to my liking. I shot everything in the PTF mode, which means that the camera will pan and tilt according to the movements but not roll, so that I keep the camera level. But if you want, you can easily use the little touchscreen or this button to set the gimbal to FPV mode, which then also activates the roll. One of my favourite features is this knob here, which you can set to tilt, pan or roll, and then simply use this knob to do one of those movements very smoothly. One more really cool feature that they've come up with is what they call AI tracking. As you can see, the camera is currently tracking me, and that is just because I gave the camera a sign. If I give them this sign, I can run away. But if I do this, it's just going to track me. It's just going to follow me anywhere. And I think that is really impressive. feiyutech also did a great job at making an app that you can connect to the gimbal via Bluetooth, which works splendidly. It even has some fancy features that are very specific and useful in certain situations, such as auto-rotation mode. Anyway, I'm pretty impressed of its capabilities. You'll see how I used it in the behind the scenes footage coming up. Huge thank you to feiyutech for making this project possible and supporting me. If you're in need of a gimbal, please do check out feiyutech. Now, with all my camera gear prepared, I was ready to begin shooting, and so the next morning I picked up Denis and we drove to the first location.
Now I'm highly beaten. There's no guideline. Way to go. Like a Roman without a goal.
We started off at a pond, which you might remember in case you saw my Polaroid video a few weeks ago. I found this beautiful spot on that shoot and decided to come back here again to shoot a couple scenes for the spec-ad. About a third of the shoot was going to happen around this area, including the intro shot, some running shots, and a wee bit of dialogue. To warm up, I decided it's best to not start with a dialogue right away and do something a bit easier, and so we began with the intro shot, which is this fast-moving shot that comes up to Denis' legs from behind and then the camera orbits around him to reveal his face. Next, we shot a similar scene in which Denis is again simply walking, but this time with a camera in his hand that he just loaded and is now approaching the pond to take a picture. I simply wanted a smooth follow shot from the front with a brief tilt down to the camera and back up to Denis' face. Next, there was one more gimbal shot to get. I rarely shoot chronologically because it's usually pretty inefficient, and so instead I had planned to shoot a group of gimbal shots all together before switching to the tripod for the dialogue scenes, so that I don't have to change my camera setup for every shot. This was going to be the most challenging shot yet. Basically, it's the same as the first, so another orbit, but this time we're moving much faster. We needed a couple of attempts, but it was worth it. I'm pretty happy with the result.
Boah, irgendwie macht der Satz, kennst du, wenn du den Satz voll oft sagst und der macht in deinem Kopf gar keinen Sinn,
Ja,
weil du nur noch so,
ich hab das
du
so
hast nur noch
oft.
so die Wörter.
Ja, ja. Und dann ist man
I'll be
sich
right
nicht sicher,
back.
ob die Wörter eigentlich stimmen.
Okay. Also, stimmt, wir schauen gerade.
Next, we spent quite some time shooting the few sentences of dialogue I needed. Of course, seeing as I was going to be in these myself, I had to go with a static shot, which I think is quite nice. I believe having a variety of moving and static shots is beneficial to the end result. We shot a couple different angles, and then once we were done with those, it was time to move on. This field and the pond were done, and next we simply walked up to the forest right next to the field, where there's a trail which was our next location. What I was looking for here are just 3 quick shots of Dennis running down the mountain.
Sorry, ich hab dich verloren in der Cam.
This last one was certainly quite the challenge, seeing as we weren't running on a field but actually down a steep hill, and so I had to always switch between looking at the monitor to see what I was filming and the ground to see where I was stepping.
Let's go.
Anyway, we survived, and with those shots done, the first and second location were wrapped, and it was time to head back into town for the last shots of the day.
Auf geht's! Ja. Und an der Kamera vorbei. Ah, yeah.
This one was especially fun to shoot, so the idea is that this is the shot that bridges the first locations, which are more in nature, to the urban locations when Dennis is running through town.
Nein!
Spontaneously, Dennis had the idea to jump over the last set of steps, which I thought would be great. Seems like I casted just the right person for this job. I'm really happy with the final result we were able to achieve here. After that, we shot a couple more running shots before moving on to the tram, which was going to be the last scene for the day. That went pretty smoothly. Again, it was a bit tough to run while also looking back at the camera, but I got what I needed, and so finally we shot a scene in the tram, and that was the end of day 1. For now, I felt good. The shoot was successful, however the possibly harder part was only about to begin on day 2. In fact, the evening of day 1 was already a bit rough, because the weather was not quite on our side. I needed some snowy scenes and had planned to come to this place, which you already know from my recent videos. However, I checked the webcams and it was not looking good, and so I spent the evening making a last minute change and completely re-scouting all the locations for day 2 to shoot on a road that goes even higher, and the really snowy scenes we were going to shoot on the top of a glacier. In the morning, I picked up Denis again and we headed to our first location, which was still a fairly easy shot. I just wanted to get a shot of him running across this field. Next, we drove on for just 2 minutes maybe, and already arrived at the next location I had scouted on Google Maps. I had found this beautiful road that almost looks like a mountain road, even though it isn't actually, and here again all I needed from Denis was some running. In the final result, it'll all make sense. I hope. After that, I had another cameo, for which I did my best to change my appearance. I needed a total of 3 static shots on the tripod, and once that was done, we drove up a road that leads to the Stubaier Glacier. On that road, we slowly approached a height at which we began to find some snow, which is exactly what I was looking for. What I needed to film here was a shot of Denis running higher up into the snowy terrain, and then some detail shots of the signs which will indicate where he is heading. Once those were done, it was time to drive to the end of the road and head up to the top of the Stubaier ski resort.
You're a dog looking good in the car, so good in the car. Sit.
This was my first time coming here, and I was pretty impressed. I've seen a lot of mountains, but it's been a while that I was this far up.
Hello, hello.
Our location here was going to be about 3,200 meters above sea level. Shooting in this environment was the ultimate test for all my gear. I was quite worried that either my camera or the gimbal might lose power in these temperatures, seeing as it was about -4 degrees Celsius. However, I can happily report that both my camera and the gimbal performed just fine. The performance issues up here came from me, seeing as handling gear up there was just way harder than in normal conditions. Also, I must applaud Denis for his phenomenal performance. As you can see, he was certainly not equipped for this environment, which is part of the story, and so Denis had to freeze his hands and legs off for the shoot. So the scene we were shooting up here was going to be the grand final where he finds a roll of Kodak gold. This was mostly some more walking shots, and then lastly the scene of Denis finding the roll. I'm really happy everything went well here, and I really look forward to showing you the final cut that came from this.
But my feet already, they're like that.
The day, however, was not over yet. There was one more shot to get back down in the valley, just outside of Innsbruck, and so after coming down the mountain and warming up in the car, we drove back to Innsbruck and shot the last shot of Denis. I explicitly say of Denis because I still had a couple shots left that I, however, could do by myself, which I was going to do on the following days. But before shooting those, I couldn't resist to just go ahead and edit the video.
There's nothing wrong with that. Trippy, yeah, we all lose track. I wouldn't mind it if I find it.
The editing process was quite straightforward because I was simply editing according to my plan. The only struggle I had was choosing the right music. There were a couple different directions I could take this spec-ad, and so choosing was a bit difficult, but I think I've selected a couple good tracks. Next, I already did the color grading for the video. For this one, I tried my best to have this mixture of a cinematic high-end look and an analog look and feel. So the result ended up being warmish. I kept a cool tone because that suited the weather, but added a lot of yellow in some areas and even a touch of red in the shadows, which I think helps to gain the analog feeling. Of course, on top I added a couple extra effects with Dehancer to really push the film simulation by using grain, bloom and halations, and some extra tweaking in the color head settings. The next day was a sunny day, and so I couldn't really get the missing shots anyway because the lighting didn't match, and so I continued on the post-production and worked on the sound design. And then I spent some time in After Effects to retouch these two shots because I needed to replace some text on the signs. With that done, I had pretty much brought the commercial as far as I could without finally shooting the missing parts, and so I got that done and finished up the video that ended up a good bit longer than I was planning actually. It's now 3 minutes and 16 seconds long. I don't know if that's a bit long for a commercial, but anyway, I want to finally show you the result, and so here it is.
Aren't you taking any photos?
I'll be right back. "42 minutes until sunset."
Banger once it's dark.
What they call price hikes?
Ah, there you are. Why'd you go out of your way for that?
Dear friends and gentle hearts, the time has come to part. The jig is up now, so lay me down.
So that was was the final result. I hope you liked it. Personally, I'm pretty happy with the outcome. It's not my best work and there are a couple things I'm quite unhappy with. However, overall, I still think it's a solid project. The main thing I'm not fully content with is how the few shots that I got later really stand out as the least appealing shots. Of course, there's always going to be a few best shots and a few worst shots, however, ideally, the contrast in quality is not too visible between them. But I just think these shots stand out as boring or even ugly in comparison to my favourite shots. One more thing I'm not entirely satisfied with is how some ideas just didn't quite work out the way I envisioned them. For example, the scene with the cliché photographer. It does work, but I do think it feels a bit disconnected and you don't quite understand that this shot is basically Denis' POV while passing the photographer. Melly confirmed this to me when she was watching it because she got a bit confused at the scene. But apart from some other minor imperfections, I think it worked out nicely. For example, I'm really happy with the music I was able to find to give the spec-ad the right energy and mood. And I think a lot of shots did end up looking really cool. When it comes to the concept, I still like it, but I just can't tell whether it really works without showing it to you and seeing what first-time viewers of this ad might think. One thing I'm really happy with though is the ending. That unspoken, only written, if you know, you know, that really gives me a sense of community, and then the tagline that says Kodak makes photos matter just rounds off the ad wonderfully, I think. Anyway, those were a couple concluding thoughts on the result. I'm excited to read all the thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much again to feiyutech for making this project possible, and also I would like to give a warm thank you to the lovely people supporting me on Patreon who are also a vital part of what makes this channel and my work possible. If you're interested in Lightroom presets, tutorials or postcards, you can check out my page via the link in the description. Also, I have a print shop by the way, in case that interests you, also in the description. With that said, I hope to see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.